after having been in technology as long as you have and doing the work and working with the different companies that you guys have, what's one thing that you've learned about human nature?
People are lazy.
Okay.
100%. I think the reason that humans are addicted to technology is because we're lazy. People want their jobs to be easier.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just as guilty as the next guy. In fact, I'm probably more guilty than most people.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you joining us for the show, wherever you're joining from, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or Apple. Really appreciate it. Hit the like and subscribe if you want to keep updated, and hit the notification bell as well. So today, got the pleasure of having Russell Quinn in with us from Quinn Technologies. Really looking forward to this. We started building a relationship with Russell because they actually are helping us with all of our IT stuff for our company here in Houston. So really excited to kind of dive into this. You've got a huge depth of experience on the IT side. Really kind of want to dig into some of that, but I want to really kind of talk about some of what you're seeing in business. We're dealing with some of the folks that, they're running a business and they've got all these IT needs. It's not their specialty. Their specialty is something totally different. How has your team kind of come across and aligned with them and that kind of thing? But before we get into all of that, give us kind of 30, 60-second intro, some background, on Quinn and what you guys are doing, and kind of how all that started.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So my name is Russell Quinn. I started in IT, officially working in 1992. Worked for a lot of large corporations. I've worked for a lot of small companies, done a lot of consulting work for companies like yours, Jay.
Yep.
In 2013, we started Quinn Technology Solutions with a lot of good ideas and no money. And so it was kind of a scary time for us. I asked my wife at the time, like, hey, what do you think about me starting my own company from all the frustrations of previous places I'd worked? And she said, yeah, go for it. If you want to do it. She had a good job and everything. And then about 2 weeks later, she got laid off. So now we had zero income. And, we prayed on it. And oddly enough, I also got a job offer right about that same time. And so that was really hard to turn down. Yeah. But, here we are 13 years later. And we're doing good. We're supporting somewhere around 60 clients.
That's awesome.
Somewhere around 1,700 total computers we
Machines,
support. Yeah. And our team has grown. We have a much bigger geographic coverage now than we had back then. And we're doing a lot. When we first started off, we were only doing IT services. Yeah. Now we're also doing compliance and cybersecurity as well.
Nice.
So along with some cloud hosting and things along those lines.
I mean, I can definitely say, like, the interactions we've had with your team, you guys have been phenomenal on that side. And just
I appreciate you saying that.
Appreciate one
of the things that we try to do differently than everybody else who's done it. One of the reasons I wanted to start my own business was because we wanted to focus more on customer service. Yeah. And not just be the nerds who, we talk great to computers, but not necessarily to people. Right. It's not who we wanted to be.
Right. No, I totally get that. I think there's definitely a disconnect with how people are interacting with technology, and the disconnect between there are business owners that really fully understand technology, and then there are business owners that they're really good at whatever their job is.
Absolutely.
But they don't necessarily understand the technology piece. And so having partners that can come alongside like that and help them lift that is just it's a huge blessing.
Well, and everybody you work with, whether it's your business or my business, the guy who runs his business and all his people, they focus on what they do. Do they make chairs? Are they electricians? Whatever they do, they don't know audiovisual. They don't know IT, and they shouldn't have to.
Yeah, correct.
Right? You hire a CPA to do your accounting because there are certain parts that your team can't handle. It's the same thing with our industries.
It's very difficult to be an expert in every single thing humanly possible.
Absolutely.
That would be very difficult for anybody to do.
Yep. So. Agree.
Having worked in IT since the 90s, technology has changed dramatically over the years. What do you feel like hasn't changed about people's relationship with technology in that time span? So if you're thinking about people's interaction with technology going all the way back to the early 90s, what do you feel like hasn't changed with that relationship between a person and how they're dealing with whatever the technology is?
I got you. So really, there's only one answer I can come up with that. At the end of the day, the purpose of technology is to make you more efficient at your job.
Yeah.
Right? That at its core has not changed. There's a lot more out there. We have the internet now. Yeah. When I first started doing it, most people weren't connected to the internet. And so if they were going to use their technology to mess around and play and not work, They were mostly playing solitaire or something along those lines, right?
Minesweeper.
Yeah. Now people can play on their computers all day long. They can surf the internet. They can watch movies, whatever. And it's just a different thing. So the technology has changed a lot, and it's allowed people to do things a lot. The people who are good workers and want to do the thing, they'll use those tools to be more efficient, and the people who don't will use them as an excuse to not work.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. What mistake do you see companies still making today that they were making 20 years ago?
I think
with that relationship.
Sure. I think the biggest mistake that I see from my industry, at least, is people doing exactly what you were talking about before, trying to do the thing themselves.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people will, my brother-in-law does it, right? He's an IT guy. Or, I hired this guy who works out of his house, or he's a corporate, he works in corporate IT somewhere. And maybe he's even a really good IT guy.
Yeah.
But how many clock ticks has he got for your company, right? And so you're dealing with a guy who comes in nights and weekends. He's not doing any proactive maintenance or anything like that. He's just fixing things that blow up. And if your thing blows up, and I was this way when I was in corporate, I had people who would call me for the help that I had helped in the past. Yeah. And they go, hey, I need you to do this thing. Hey, look, man, I'm making $120,000 a year. I can't stop right now this job that pays my bills and come to your office to make $200. Man, I'm sorry. Yeah. I just can't do it. No. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see today.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. I mean, I think it's both having been in business and owned our own businesses, for a period of time, you kind of have that stage in the beginning where you're like, man, how do I actually get this thing off the ground?
Yes.
How do I bootstrap it? And it's like, everybody tries to look for those shortcuts and because at the time you may have to, right? Because you don't have the capital or you don't have the investment, those kind of things. So it's definitely, I think it's a problem of, it's like, when do you actually start to offload some of those things, right? And how fast can you do that, right? Because to your point, I mean, if you're being reactive on everything, like, those things are going to cause you huge issues that, if you have a breach in data or if you have some other thing happen, that's a much bigger issue that people just don't think about. Right?
Well, and a lot of people aren't thinking about the risk avoidance, right? They're thinking about, okay, if my person can't print, if my person can't boot their computer up or whatever, they're losing productivity. And that's not a big deal. Yeah. But if somebody comes in and cleans your bank accounts out, your business is done. You're out, especially at the startup phase, right? And we've had to go both ways. We've had people who are startups that are like, hey, we know we need IT. Come in at the beginning, design it from the beginning, and let's go forward. Those are great because everything's clean. There's not a lot of junk you got to try to fix. You don't have to try to break them from bad habits and all these kind of stuff. And then we have people who are like you were talking about before, like, and our business was like this. Like we couldn't afford a CPA at the beginning. Yeah. I couldn't even afford computers. Yeah. Right. I bought a box of parts from a friend of mine who worked in corporate IT who'd give me a box of laptop parts. I was able to cobble together 3 laptops. And we worked on those pieces of junk for 2 years. They were such garbage. And I still have them just to show people.
I totally get that.
Yeah. Totally so you run your business like you have to until you run it like you want to. And I guarantee you and I are still the same way. Yeah. Neither one of us is driving the cool Ferraris and everything. Right. We'd like to do things better than we are, but finances squeeze us and you got to do what you got to do. So
and it's finding the making those decisions and finding the pieces of data that you can lean into and say, okay, we've done it this way for long enough. Like, it's time to, for lack of a better term, professionalize what we're doing. Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing.
Well, and we're kind of feeling a little bit of that. I brought my buddy James with me today. It works with me, and we were talking about that just recently. The whole, when you're small, right? How many policies and procedures do you really have to have? How many processes you have to? It's all up here. Yeah. There's only 2 or 3 of you. It's no big deal. Yeah. Well, my team's up to about 15 now. Yeah. Right. And we're starting to butt up against that. So now we're going through and saying, okay, let's create these policies and processes and things like that that are documented, not just in our heads, so that everybody does things the same.
Yeah, it's at that point, like, to your point, it's the consistency of delivery, right?
Correct.
Because at the end of the day, like, the part of the customer service experience is the consistency of delivery.
Absolutely.
If I'm talking to you or I'm talking to James or I'm talking to one of the other guys, the consistency of how you guys are delivering your service is a key component.
Well, and each technician, like for my business, if a technician goes on site and he works at a particular client site, then he winds up knowing that client pretty well. But I have other technicians who've never been there. Yeah. Right. So we have to have a documentation system that guy will go in and plug all that stuff in. So he's like, oh, I'm going to go to this client site. I'm going to go look through the documentation and make sure I understand about this environment before I go.
Because you're at least at that point, you're at least familiar with what's going on. And we do the same thing, like from a system design standpoint, we'll go back and review, drawings of systems that we've done that somebody else is going to service, right? Or something along those lines. It definitely makes it a whole lot easier. So after leading technology teams and running your own MSP, for a while now, how has your definition of what a great IT leader looks like changed over the years?
That's a good question. So when I first started my business, I managed several teams prior to starting my own company. But at that point, I was only managing technical people, right? And so it was real easy. It is real easy for me to manage technical people because when a situation arises, I ask myself, how would I react in that situation?
Yeah.
Because most of us are wired in the same way mentally.
Yeah.
And so again, as I mentioned with the customer service thing, I realized at one point in my business that we needed to have more people who were not technology focused because my clients aren't technology people. They don't think like we think, right? So now I'm hiring in account managers. Yeah. I've got accounting staff. I've got HR staff. I've got marketing people. I had sales people. Those people don't think like I think.
Yeah.
So I had to grow and learn how to manage people who don't think like I do. Yeah. Their natural instinct isn't the same one mine is. And so that's been a big challenge for me. And it's definitely a way that I think that a good technology manager has to grow to be a good leader.
Totally get that. What traits do you look for when hiring somebody in?
Oh, that's a fantastic question.
To the team.
So we have a thing that we have a couple of processes that we use to make sure we get the right people. And I tell everybody I interview, it's not that I don't care what your technical skills are, but I care more what your customer service skills are.
Yeah.
I want people who are people.
Yeah.
I would rather a technician go on site and not be able to resolve the technical issue.
Yeah.
Right. And then come back to my office and say, hey, we got this problem. I'm having trouble figuring it out. Can we get together and can I get some help?
Yeah.
Right. But the client be happy.
Yeah.
Then a technician who goes on site, fixes the problem and comes back and the client calls me up like, who is this jerk you sent to my office? Right. Because we've all worked with you've run into IT guys like that, right?
We have all been there.
There was the whole Saturday Night Live meme about the move guy, right? Yeah. Well, that's a stereotype for a reason.
It is. Yeah,
IT guys, especially back in the 90s and stuff like that, that was 95% of the IT guys out there.
Yeah.
They were not personable, and they got away with it because most of the IT you saw was in big corporations,
Correct.
right? Well, the end users didn't have a say in whether or not this guy was a jerk.
Correct.
We're consultants. We can be fired in a second, just like your business, right? So we have to be better customer service, right? And most of my competitors, they're more focused on efficiencies and being able to handle as many tickets as possible a certain period of time.
Yeah.
I don't care about that. I really don't.
Yeah.
Like if I have to be overstaffed, I have to be overstaffed.
Yeah.
I would rather, I had one of my clients tell me the other day, he's like, one of the things that I love about your team is I have to be the one to hang up the phone.
Yeah.
When I call them, they'll sit and talk about my kids,
That's awesome.
baseball or whatever until I'm done.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not about how fast we pump through. It's about whether or not at the end of that interaction, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Right. And that's entirely our goal for our new people.
And it's definitely a much more relational way to run business.
Sure.
Right.
And I can teach tech.
Yeah.
Teaching customer service is way harder for me than teaching tech is.
Have you seen the, when Simon Sinek talks about, he's had the conversations with some of the military organizations and how they pick people and all that kind of stuff. And it's like they want people of, high skill, high trust, and you want somebody, you're more concerned about having somebody of high trust than high skill because skill you can always teach somebody and you can always run through that, but you can't always get high trust. Right. And so just the difference between that and how all that works out, it's always very interesting to get a perspective of how other business owners are finding individuals and how you're kind of getting to that. We go through a process, like when we have people interview for the company, we have them go through and actually take a personality test so that we know who they naturally are in their natural state, because you don't want to take somebody who's extremely introverted and try and slot them into a sales position where they have to go talk to people, right? It's not going to make sense.
Sure.
Right. So totally get that. That makes a lot of sense.
I had a frustration at one place that I worked, because IT guys are unique. You hear the people talk about herding cats and stuff like that, right? IT guys are not your typical type of person. They tend to be nerdy.
Yep.
They tend to be very opinionated.
Yep.
And this place that I was working, the owner of the company, wanted every technician to be treated exactly the same way and fulfill the same roles and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, man, it doesn't work that way with IT guys. Like that may work at McDonald's for the guys who flip burgers. It doesn't work for these highly trained, highly paid, highly egotistical people. Right? Right. I said, do you remember the little toy we had as a kid? It was like red on one side and blue on the other, twisted little pieces that would go in, had a star pattern and a half moon. That's IT guys. There's no square pegs and round holes. Right? You're trying to hammer a half moon and a circle and all these different pieces.
And it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. So instead of trying to force all your technicians to be exactly the same, what you got to do is look at them and go, what pattern? Okay, that guy's a star. Do I have a star hole in my organization? Okay, you do this function. What about you? Oh, you're a half moon? I got a half moon over here. Let's have you over here. Right? It makes them happy. It makes them less frustrated. So their work-life balance goes up. They're happier. Right? They're more happy to be in your office. That means they give better customer service to your customers. Right? So at the end of the day, my job as a business owner is to make my technicians happy, my employees happy, right? Because my employees make my customers happy. And then in turn, those customers pay me, which makes me happy.
And it's a circle. It's right. The circle of happiness.
Exactly. Exactly what we try for.
That's awesome. Switching gears a little bit, the best technologies sometimes go unnoticed. They kind of become this invisible thing that runs in the background.
Okay.
What are the most important technologies decisions that a business is making that nobody ever sees?
That's an interesting question that I don't know that I've ever pondered on the way you're phrasing it. I would think the most critical piece of technology that most people don't think about, I'm not sure that's exactly the question you asked, but the most important technical thing, at least from an IT perspective, is your backups. Wherever your data is, it needs to be backed up. And it needs to be backed up somewhere segregated, preferably geographically, from where your data is. I also prefer it to be a completely different vendor. So for example, if you're storing all your data with Microsoft in Azure, right? I would want to back up your data to a third-party vendor or Google or somewhere different.
Somewhere else,
So that I never want to trust one vendor to not lose. If you're going to make such a major flaw as you could lose my data, you'll also make such a major flaw as to not have good solid backups. Right. And so I'm a very paranoid person by personality, which also makes me good at cybersecurity. But so I like to have multiple levels of backups. I had a client one time when we came in, I was like, okay, well, here's how we do our backups. We're going to do this, this, and this. He's like, well, I already have this other backup solution. Is it okay if I keep that? You want to go out and buy 3 more backup solutions? I'm all for that too. Like I want more backups, not less.
The more that you can have, the better off.
Absolutely. If you have 10 copies of your data somewhere and something happens, great. I'm all for that. Right. It's also a good hedge against, people talk about, okay, what are the cybersecurity tools that you guys have? I always list backups as one of them because that is a recovery tool if the bad guys do ransomware or whatever this stuff is.
You can still get your data back.
I think that's one of the most overlooked things because it's boring. Nobody wants to.
Well, and it's in the background and nobody ever really thinks about it.
Correct. Unless it blows up.
If you're doing it correctly, correct. Because if you're doing it correctly, like your machine's backing up and you don't even know about it. It's happening and you never even see it. Right? Absolutely. So totally get that. That's a good one.
We try to bring it top of mind. I know you're still new and you probably haven't had one yet, but we try to have regular technology business reviews, and one of the reports we bring are your server backup reports. Here's the backups for your 365 environment. Here's the backups to your server, so you can look at all the greens, yellows, and reds. And another thing that I like to tell people is, if any IT guy or probably really any kind of vendor brings you or is consistently bringing you reports like that, and everything's always green, you're being lied.
Something's
something's off.
Something's not right.
There's naturally going to be some times when a file is locked or whatever, and it can't back it up, so you get a yellow or a red or whatever. That's not a problem. As long as you have green, yellow, red, green, you're golden. Right?
As long as you're actually seeing true legitimate data that's telling you like, hey, because like with anything else, in business and especially in small business, like the benchmark of like, we're doing 1% better. You just do 1% better and you compound that over a month, a week, a year, you're going to be in a totally different position over that span of time.
Absolutely.
And so it's just like making those incremental changes. Like I think a lot of people don't think about kind of exactly what you're talking about. For us, the way that we look at that is there's always the design or the plan, like the perfect world plan for a system, right? And it's like, we're going to mount a TV here, we're going to mount this other piece of gear here, and they're going to connect this way. But it doesn't always work like that in the real world, right? And so there are adjustments that have to be made. And so it's like, this is plan A. this is plan A 1.2. You know, if this doesn't work for whatever reason, we're always going to have some kind of a backup to say, okay, here, if we're going to shift, we're going to pivot. Like you need to be able, like in any of these situations, like if you're doing an install or you're working on a system, you need to be able to pivot pretty quickly. Right. Because speed of business it moves really fast, right? And if something's happening, you need to be able to move with it. Right.
Well, and your industry may be a little bit differently from mine, but again, going back to my guys being cats.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
One of our flaws is that we're very egotistical.
Yeah.
And I can figure this problem out.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And I keep having to remind the guys sometimes, and I fall into the same trap.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey, our goal is not to figure it out. The client doesn't care that we figured out the problem. The client just wants the problem fixed.
They want the resolution.
So call the vendor's tech support and let them tell you how to fix it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's like, hey, this machine is 6 years old. Let's just replace the piece of equipment and keep trucking. And I didn't get to figure out the problem. Who cares?
It doesn't matter.
Like I know you do because that's how we're wired. But the goal is client productivity, not did we figure it out and be really smart.
It's like get to a place where you can get the client back up and running where they're happy and everything's moving forward. But at the same time, you can still do a debrief after the fact. Of course. Figure out what happened, right? And continue working that problem, right? But like get the client back to a place that it's functional.
Get them efficient.
It's like if the airplane is flying, but the beverage cart doesn't want to roll, you can figure the beverage cart out later. Let's keep the plane flying.
You can figure it out on the ground.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like after you land, you can work on it all you want. So
100%.
You've spent your career helping businesses use technology better.
Yes, sir.
What's one business problem that technology alone can't solve?
Security. Is probably the best answer I can come up with that. I as you know, I do cybersecurity lunch and learns. I did one for you guys recently.
Yeah.
And one of the slides that I used to have in my presentations, it's a cartoon, and it's a boxing ring. And on one side you have all the security tools and the IT guys and all this stuff trying to protect you, and the other side you have Bob. Right. And Bob's the guy who clicks on the link or doesn't do the training and does all the wrong things. Right. No matter how good your tools are, no matter how good your security is, one guy on the inside doing the wrong thing will blow your security out of the water. Yeah. A good example. You've got an alarm. You've got a lock on your door. Some guy walks up with a shotgun and a ski mask and knocks on your door, and your employee looks out and goes, "Oh, he looks like a nice guy," and goes opens the door. All your securities went out the window. Yeah. Cybersecurity works exactly the same way. Yeah. You know, if you got people that are out there doing crappy stuff, you're going to have crappy problems. And it's funny because people say, well, hey, what do I got to do to have a really secure environment where I never get, especially people who've been hacked before. Hey, I spent millions of dollars getting out of this hole. I never want to have this happen again. Okay, great. I can line up all the tools and policies and procedures and all the things you can do to be safe. Yeah. But if you have a bad culture, you're still going to have problems. Yeah. And I've had clients with no tools that never had problems. Yeah. And for a long time, I was like, I can't understand why. But then I started talking to these people. Yeah. And they have a good corporate culture of like, hey, when we're at work, we're working. Yeah. Right? I'm not out there surfing the web, looking for stuff, installing applications, doing these other things. I'm working. Yeah. I'm going to this particular site where I'm, running this application and taking care of my clients. And those people, they typically don't have the same problem. Now, they used to have phishing and things like that. Right. Those sorts of things. But as far as, people going and clicking on things they're not supposed to just randomly out on the internet, it cuts it way down.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I mean, it's funny because we have like similar situations where, like if people aren't trained on how to use systems, right? One of the trends that we saw a couple of years ago, everybody was talking about how like, oh, these new technologies with Teams and new digital whiteboarding solutions and all these other things, it's all going to make collaboration so much better and everybody's going to collaborate more. And collaboration was like the buzzword of everything. It's like, this is what we're going to do. Right. But at the end of the day, you can't solve a behavioral problem with the technology, like to what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Right. You've got to solve it at the person. And the person has to be willing to do that themselves. And they have to figure out, hey, I need to be a part of this, because you can have the absolute best platform to collaborate with your team. And if you as an individual are not willing to collaborate because it's an action, it's not a technology. Yeah. Right. The action of collaborating is being willing to go have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, I need help on this. Like you were talking about, right? I can't figure this out. We need to get this person back up and running. What do we need to do to fix this? How do I do that? And that's a behavioral thing more than it is technology. You can install the best technology, the best tools, and none of that's going to change. Like if you don't have people that are willing to do that.
Yeah, a tool is a thing to help you do a job.
Yeah.
Right. But if you don't want to do the job, it could be a shovel, right? I need to make a hole right here. Okay, well, a shovel will make it easier, but you can dig with your hands too. But if the guy doesn't want to dig, the shovel doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that. So having spent as much time as you have helping companies navigate technology, what's something that you believed at one time with absolute certainty that, it's this way, in your career or whatever, that now looking back on it, you feel like you're completely wrong on that?
Okay. I got a funny one for you on that to answer that one. So as you mentioned earlier, I've been nerding around for a long time. Mm-hmm. When I first started doing IT, Windows was not a thing.
Yeah.
Everything was command line. We used DOS. We used mainframes and mid-range computers that were all command line based or menu driven tools. When Windows came out, I had just enough memory on my computer to install it and run it, but I couldn't run any I couldn't install any applications into it because I didn't have the memory. I had 2 meg of RAM. Yeah. 2 meg of RAM, not gig. And so I got Windows. I loaded it up. And I think it was Windows 3.0. Anyway, I'm playing with it, and I remember very distinctly saying, "This is computers for dummies. This is never going to catch on. This is the dumbest thing ever. Why would anybody want this? You could do so much more with the command line than you can with this GUI junk. Yep. Right? Moving a mouse and all that stupidity. Like it's just it's dumb. Yeah." Nobody's gonna adopt this. It's you're so much more efficient with these menus we've made for you to run your Lotus 123 and your WordPerfect and all this, your database app and all this kind of stuff. Nobody's gonna adopt this junk. So I think that's probably where I was the biggest wrong. as Microsoft has proved time and time.
As we are all using the Windows interface and the mouse now.
The other thing that I seriously kicked myself over regularly was not buying Microsoft stock at that point.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I would be a multi-millionaire.
We used to have conversations. This is my dad when he was still here in my he used to tell me all the time. He's like, man, I wish I had listened to your grandfather, because my grandfather told him at one point, he's like, there's this new thing coming out called cellular. We should probably look into that. Yeah. And I'm like, we probably should have.
Hindsight's 2020.
Yes,
right?
It is. Very much so. Very much so. Most people think technology problems think that technology problems are technology problems. Mm-hmm. How often do you think that it's not the technology, it's actually a people problem?
I don't want to insult any of my clients, but that does happen, right? There's quite a few times where we work with somebody and we're like, it works fine for everybody else, and this is not and sometimes it's training issues, like you mentioned before with the other tool. Yep. But sometimes there's people who they have a hard time grasping technology. Yeah. In general. And the funny thing is like, as IT guys, we get the idea, it's the old guy, right? It's usually not. Yeah. It's random. I've seen people who are, straight out of college and like, okay, well, you had to use technology just to get through school. How are you, like, you grew up with this. Mm-hmm. How are you struggling with these basic concepts? Yeah. But sometimes we see it. As far as a percentage goes, honestly, I'd say probably 95% of the time it really is technology. Technology is a lot more complex now than it was when I first started doing tech. Mm-hmm. Back when I started doing technology, the software was relatively simple. Hardware was very complicated. The reverse of that is true now, and also with the cost. Yeah. So today, back when I first started, if you started having problems with the computer, you were breaking out your soldering iron and you were replacing chips on motherboards and things like that. It was very complicated. You had to have special software just to configure the hardware. Now, if you have a problem 9 times out of 10, it's a $500 computer. Let's just buy another one and keep trucking, all right? Yeah. Cost has really changed a lot of the troubleshooting on the hardware side. Yeah. But what's complex is software now. I mean, think of all the things we have now. We were talking about the command line stuff before. Yeah. You have GUIs, you have internet, you have all these different applications that run on top of it, things that were never even dreamed of back then that we're able to do today. Yeah. Connect to your smartphones, which are way more powerful than what we sent man to the moon with. Yeah, right. And so those are little mini computers. They're also little mini security risks along with everything else. And people are connecting to their networks where everything else is. And same thing's true of your smart TVs and all these other things. I mean, these things have functional computers in them that bad guys can hack into, and they can do things. So a lot more complicated stuff out there than there used to be. Yeah. So the speed at which technology has moved forward across
everything, right? Even in what we do, the technology of displays and how content is displayed and how, audio is reproduced.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's so many things that have changed even in the last, 5-10 years, that it's dramatically changed the way that you got to think about that. And everything seems to be as networked now. Like everything runs on network.
Well, and how, not just how people interact with technology, but who interacts with technology. Because like early on, it was your accounting people and maybe a few engineers and things like that who used computers.
Yeah.
Now, like the guy who sweeps your floor has a computer.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody has a computer now. And I you farmers, people who you think is very not technologically advanced, the farmer of today, super technical people.
Yeah.
Right. They're mapping out their fields. Right. They're looking at rainfall in different sections. I mean, they're using these, computer controlled equipment and things like that. Like a farmer, the guy who is planting and growing crops. But yeah, I mean, technology is changing every industry. I don't care what you do.
Yeah. It's super interesting to watch that. I watched a podcast the other day. A guy was talking about, he basically started his whole business. It was super interesting because he was Amish and he's no longer Amish. So he has technology and is doing some things with technology, but like what he's doing now is like actually spraying fields with autonomous drones.
Okay.
So like think about crop dusting and like the planes that you'd have involved with that. And now that's all being completely done via AI. And like you're talking about, the field is mapped. So the drone knows exactly the pattern it has to take, exactly what it has to do. So you get a much more consistent coverage of whatever you're spraying on the field and all the rest. It's just things that you would never think about, like technology interacting with and having some kind of like a significant impact on. Totally changes that.
But as a business owner, guys like you and me now think about things like margins and that was always such a tight margin business to begin with. I mean, how many farmers lost their land and went out of business because they had a bad drought year or something like that? Technology is changing so much of that, where it's helping them make it into a viable business. I heard a joke one time about a farmer who won the lottery. And they asked, well, what are you going to do with your millions of dollars? He's like, I just think I'll just farm till it's all gone.
Right.
So
yeah, it's crazy. Like it's interesting. If I followed you around for a month and saw every client and company that you guys advise, what would I discover is the real reason that businesses struggle with technology?
I think training is probably a good common problem. And I think that it's real easy going back to there's so much technology now, right? There's so much that you have to use to do your job day to day that's technology related. It's hard to have all of your employees completely trained on everything they need to the level they really should be. Because let's say, for example, you buy a new ERP.
Yeah.
And you're training your people through, well, then, a couple, 3 months later, the boss decides to hire these CAS guys to install all new audiovisual systems. Oh, well, we got anybody trained on that. That's pretty complicated. Well, okay, let's do that. And then a few months later, there's another thing. Okay, well, let's train a lot of people on that. Well, there's people being missed along the way because you keep switching from thing to thing to thing. And it's hard to be good at any kind of technology without some training, right?
And without creating some kind of muscle memory, right?
Correct. And there are training tools out there if that's a problem in your organization. Not something we sell necessarily, but we could always help somebody with this. That where you can go in and you can say, okay, let's take the training from CAS, let's take training from the ERP, let's take the training from Word and Excel and those sorts of things. Let's plug it all in this single learning tool. Maybe we'll put our HR stuff in there too, right? All these different training things. If you have a cybersecurity insurance, you got cybersecurity training you got to do every year. Let's put that in there, right? And then have a centralized place where your employees can go and self-train. Now you still need to have maybe your HR people or somebody tracking the people are doing that.
Yeah.
And maybe the managers and things like that as well for their people. But
do you think most business owners, business leaders, do you think they realize that that's the problem, or that's a large problem?
I don't know if they do or don't. You have a lot of personalities with managers and things like that. You have a lot of personalities. I don't think that most managers think about technology in general. I think they think more about personalities and employees and things along those lines. I may be wrong, but I think, at least from my management perspective, I don't necessarily think of I think about whether my guys are trained from the standpoint of the things they have to go help their their customers with.
Right.
I don't necessarily think a whole lot about how good are they at Word, for example, or Excel or something like that. That might make them more efficient. And I think maybe, and I'm probably think more about those sorts of things because I'm in a technology business. I think, say, for example, let's go back to the guy who makes chairs, right? He wants to make sure that the guy who works for him understands the planer and the joiner and all those kind of machinery. I don't know that he really thinks that much about, hey, this guy would be more efficient if he was using AI to sort his email, for example, right? Or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they really think about it as much as they could. And I don't think that that everybody, I know that very few companies use their technology to its full potential.
What percentage would you say, if you had to put a percentage on it, on how much time they're actually using, the percentage they're actually using?
I would guess probably about 50%.
You think so?
Yeah, it's a swag.
There's times I almost wonder if I would say it's less than that, just in what we do, right?
Yeah.
Because you're seeing a different piece of.
I can promise you that we have deployed tools in our organization that I know we are only using a small percentage of.
Right.
And want to use more. And part of it is training. Yeah, like, okay, well, training takes time.
Yeah.
And part of it is manpower.
Yeah.
Right. Because our focus is taking care of the clients.
Yeah.
So learning this other thing that will maybe make us more efficient, maybe it'll make us more money because I won't have to hire as many people or whatever. I don't always have time for it because we've got to spend those clock ticks on making sure that we maintain our customer service and quality.
What kind of, and this is more specific to you guys from a business standpoint, what kind of ROI do you think you've seen in your business from having your guys do training on specific things?
I could quantify that with numbers. I know that we lose business if we don't train on particular things. For example, we don't focus on. We sell cloud services, right? And we don't focus on selling Microsoft or Google. And there's some technological reasons behind that. That having been said, when I talk to a new customer like you, they already have an environment as a rule, right? So if they have one of those things and we almost never work with it, we have a gap.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so if I sit down and I talk to that particular client and I say, hey, I'd love to be your IT guy. Here's all the cool stuff about us. And they're like, we love you. We have this thing. And I'm like, well, we don't really do that thing a lot, but we'll learn it. We'll do a good job. That doesn't always go over well.
Yeah.
Right. So if I know ahead of time, then I can send a guy to training or whatever, if it's something that we haven't touched in a long time or haven't ever touched at all. But obviously we work with Azure quite a bit. We have some clients who use Azure and things like that.
Right.
And so we've done the training on that. But we definitely can lose new business if we don't know a certain thing.
Right.
As far as existing clients go, I'll give you a good example. We had a client we were meeting with just earlier this week, and he's like, hey, we're thinking about deploying this ERP. Do you know anything about it? Well, no, I don't.
Yeah.
So we already have a relationship. I mean, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Right? We've never supported it, right?
Yeah.
So we already have a relationship. So I'm not worried about losing the relationship per se, right? But it's like, okay, so we don't know this tool, but we're going to reach out to the vendor. We're going to talk to them. We're going to ask them some questions.
Yeah.
We're going to learn about it, and then we'll help you deploy it. And then when that happens, then we'll start doing some training on that tool from a support standpoint, not necessarily from a operational standpoint.
No, that totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, and we think about that a lot with like the investment in technology, right? Because if you're going to install a conference room or a boardroom or a training room or any of those kind of things, right? Those become very intimidating very quickly for people who've never been in there and never used it. And if you've never touched the technology, if you don't know how to use it, right, you're like, I'm sure you've been in a meeting where somebody goes in there and they try to turn on the conference room and it doesn't come on. And now everybody's looking at them going, what are we doing here?
Sure.
That kind of thing. And so it's like, I totally agree with you on the training aspect of that. And I think there's probably like a fundamental set of basic principles for how do I work on my laptop? How do I, work in basic software pieces? What are the basic level principles that I need to learn for that? And then what are the basic level principles that I need to learn for my AV system or whatever, right? So that when I go into where I feel like I can confidently walk into any space and at least do the basic functions of what I need to do to get my job done, right? That kind of deal. So,
well, let me go one more thing on this, on this topic.
Yeah.
So there's also different types of tools.
Yeah.
Right. So like you mentioned when we were having our conversation before the podcast about amps and stuff like that, right? So let's say you go into a client site and they're like, hey, there's 10 different kinds of hammers, right? And I have this specific kind of hammer. Have you ever used this hammer? Well, no, but hammer's hammer, right? I mean, I can pick any of these hammers up and I can still drive a nail straight. I can't, but some people can. but the concept is good, right?
Yeah.
So, and there are some tools that are like that. Okay, I've never touched this type of this particular tool you're talking about, but I've used a dozen other ones just like it. The learning curve is going to be almost zero, right?
Yeah.
Then there's other situations. I'll give you a good one. Phones. We don't focus on phones.
Yeah.
We help people with phones if they really want us to. We are not really a telephony vendor, right? We've got a client right now that has a different phone system than we prefer, and we've been having some challenges with it. So, a hammer's not a hammer in that situation, right? So I went out and I bought some phones that were the same kind of phones that they use. And we went and bought a couple of licenses for them. And my guys are banging on them and learning them and figuring it out and trying to help solve this client problem, right? And so, again, two different kinds of tools.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to, and I'm sure it's the same, if you got some new A/B piece of equipment that's like a totally different thing. Okay, we're used to using, I almost started spitting out brand names. You know them better than I do. I've been used to using this kind of brand, and this kind of brand, they skin the cat a different way.
Yeah.
So maybe I got to buy one of those and bang on it. Sometimes they'll be nice to send you a demo unit or something like that you can play with. We have that sometimes too.
Yeah.
And try this thing out and learn it, and then maybe send it back, maybe just purchase it outright or whatever after the fact. But sometimes we just have to bite the bullet and buy them up front.
We spend an enormous amount of time doing that, and there are few instances where we will suggest to somebody to install a technology that we haven't already tested and gone through and identified, like, hey, yes, it's going to work. No, it's not. Or yes, it is, but here's the caveat and here's the list of things you need to watch out for, right? From a reliability standpoint, because the last thing you want to do is go in and have somebody spend, $10, $50, $100,000 on a room.
Right.
And then something not work. And, it'd be a very simple fix, but it's basically because we didn't test it ahead of time and we didn't know to highlight the potential issue.
Sure.
Right. Same type of a deal.
You don't really come into environments where there's already a stuff that you have to support.
We totally do.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's instances where I did a site walk 2 days ago, and they've got an existing sound system that they want to go through and they want to update it, but they don't want to have to go completely from scratch because the cost involved in just gutting everything out. We totally understand that.
Yeah, of course.
Typically what we will do is go in and say, okay, of the system that you have, these are the components that we feel like will still be reliable, will still function and do what you need them to do. And then here's the additional pieces that you're going to need to bring all of that together and make it work. There's a lot of companies that don't do that because at the end of the day, on the business side of it is far easier to just scrap the whole thing and start from scratch. Because at that point, that you've done all of the pieces to that. Some people are willing to do that. Some people aren't. It's just, you have to kind of be able to have the flexibility to roll with it either direction. Right.
Yeah. For us on equipment, we try to be as brand agnostic as we can.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be able to support anything that a client brings to me.
Yeah.
But when it comes time that, hey, it's time to replace this piece, it's getting old, your risk is going up.
Yeah.
Here's what we recommend.
Yeah.
And, there's always the Ford Chevy thing. Like these guys love the Ford trucks. These guys love the Chevy trucks. I drive a Toyota. Everybody has their preferences on whatever the thing is, right? But, and we're the same way.
Yeah.
For example, somebody comes and say, hey, what's the best firewall? I'll split second and say FortiGate, right? Palo Alto is an amazing firewall. Right?
Yeah.
Cisco makes some good firewalls. Checkpoint makes some good firewalls. There's some other good firewalls out there.
Yeah.
This just happens to be my preference, right?
Yeah.
So if you came to me and you said, hey man, we've got a Palo Alto, should I rip it out? Nope. Not if it's not old.
Yeah.
Let's keep it as long as it's up to date and everything.
Yeah.
Let's replace it when the time comes for consistency.
Yeah.
And honestly, another part of it, and maybe you don't see this in your business, but for me, I prefer not to support 50 different of the same thing.
Right. I mean, it makes it easier. Like we're talking about from a training perspective, if you're going to send somebody to training, it's far easier to train somebody on one system that you then kind of perpetuate. We've done that. I mean, so we're very much the same way from being, brand agnostic around to we don't really care what the brand is. What we are more concerned about is that it's reliable.
Correct.
That
100%.
Because so often what happens, at least in our industry, is people go in with a big project in mind to redo a conference room or redo, a ton of conference rooms, right?
Yep.
They get to the end of the project, they get to the end of delivery, and it's the dealer walking away from the blackjack table, nothing in my sleeves, I'm out, and then it's you can never find that person again, right?
He's been paid.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. Because the dealer made his money, right?
That's right.
But at the end of the day, what we have found, especially coming from that environment, and I think at least from what we've talked about so far, I think you're
kind of path to business ownership and starting the company the way that you did, coming out of larger corporations, coming out of having been the guy in that seat that had to have somebody come, do support and all those kind of things, it makes you think about those deliveries different, right? Correct. So it's like project day one, when it's complete, is one thing. Project day two, when it's actually in real world use and your client is using it, is a totally different experience. And that goes back to the customer service piece, like you were talking about earlier. You've got to be thinking about not just the end of this project and moving on to the next one. Yes, that's a component of what you're doing, but you also have to be thinking about day two. I'm handing this off to somebody to support it now. Are they going to be able to actually support it? Have I given them the tools that they need to actually support it, right? That's a huge component of that. And for us, like, it's the same type of a thing. You think about when I'm installing kit in a room, I want to make sure that I know this kit is going to be consistent and it's going to work really well, right? So we've done a lot of, Teams room systems, right, for Windows or Android, right? There are certain pieces of those systems that function really well and work really well, and we know what those are because we've built hundreds of those rooms now. And there are some pieces that don't. And audio in some is better, video in some is better. And it's just being able to kind of integrate all of those things together. Hence the name for what we do, integration, right? It's the whole thing of bringing those things together. If you're not doing that in a way at the end of the day where the client walks away with something that is supportable and they can manage it, what are we doing in the first place?
Exactly.
Right? That's the whole thing. So yeah, standardizing on certain brands. I feel like what a lot of people, at least in our industry, have done is they've standardized on certain brands because they get a better margin on whatever that brand is.
It's not about the quality of the client.
It's not about the quality and it's not about the reliability. And that's something that I very much hesitated getting into integration for a long time, specifically for that reason. I did not want to go down that road. I wanted to make sure that we had enough experience across enough different platforms that we could say, this system will function reliably. This system will function reliably. I'm not going to suggest something to you that I wouldn't put in our own office, right? It doesn't make sense to do that because at the end of the day, 2 months after it's installed, if you're having to go back, two things happen. Your client isn't happy because the system doesn't work the way that they were sold, right? But the other thing too is you lose money because you're having to go back multiple different times and fix something that should have never been an issue in the first place. So it causes them problems and it causes you problems, and then none of you are happy.
Well, and that actually goes contrary to the whole business model of an MSP. We're not hourly. Right. So if I'm sending technician time after time after time, that caused my cost to go up, but I make no more profit. So drag business. So yeah, we definitely want to do that. Another thing with the hardware that I don't know if you see in your industry or not, is that for us, a lot of times who's the best today won't be the best tomorrow. And not just because some dude comes out with a new tool with more features or whatever, right? Because of cybersecurity, especially. I'm constantly evaluating products. I probably look at a new product at least once a week. And as a company, a lot more than that, because the best antivirus today, the best firewall today, the best whatever protection today is not going to be the same one in a year, most likely.
100%.
Right? And so, sometimes those companies, I've seen it be something as simple, and I'm going to try really not be nice and not name names, but there's one company that I know, they came out with the firewalls. Pretty much all they did was firewalls and access points, and they were doing a pretty cool job. They were doing some neat things. They were a very unique way they were handling stuff, and it was really capturing the industry's attention. And then they started doing cameras, and then they started doing this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing. And their focus started splitting all these different things. It's one of the reasons why we don't do every possible technology thing there is. We bring in other companies like yours, right? We don't do audio visual. When somebody comes to us and says, hey, you need this, we find somebody like you and we partner, right? Because if you focus on too many different things as a business, your quality goes down on each one of those individual things. Well, I wanted to be good at what we do and let everybody else do all those other things. So we go to a lot of training. I go to at least 3 cybersecurity conferences a year. And part of that is, hey, let's evaluate new tools, see what's out there. Who's been in the industry for a while, but is doing it better than they used to be doing. If you don't mind,
absolutely,
I'd like to ask you a question.
Certainly.
So, if I can remember what it was now. We talked for so long, my brain wandered so many different places. I'm a very hyper-focused person. Oh, shoot. No, I think I have lost it. Well, let's come back to it.
Okay. after having been in technology as long as you have and doing the work and working with the different companies that you guys have, what's one thing that you've learned about human nature?
People are lazy.
Okay.
100%. And I think that people I think the reason that humans are addicted to technology is because we're lazy.
Yeah.
Right? People want their jobs to be easier.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just as guilty as the next guy. In fact, I'm probably more guilty than most people. One of the reasons that technology appealed to me to begin with is I absolutely despise repetitive tasks.
Yep.
And so I initially started off as a programmer.
Yeah.
And the reason that that it appealed to me was I've done this same task 6 times. Surely I can write a program
To do this.
that will do it, right? If you can train a monkey to punch a button, right? You can train a robot to punch that same button, right? So it's again, it goes back to the way that a lot of IT guys are wired. We despise repetitive, boring type tasks. We thrive on the challenge, the finding the new thing. And I think all humans are wired that way to a certain point. Of course, people can use technology to not do their jobs like we were talking before.
Yeah.
But if they can find ways to automate or find a new tool, and I think that's one of the reasons why AI is taking off so well. There is a bit of AI buzzwordiness, right? There's like there was with cloud before it, and back when Steve Jobs,
the internet, period.
Well, and when Steve Jobs came out with the iPhone, everything was I this and I that. You know, there's all these different buzzwords that come out, and everybody's all excited about it because all the magazines are writing about it. They don't really know what it is. In fact, my favorite one is asking people, "Do you know what cloud means?" Right, and let them try to tell me. And then I laugh.
It's up there.
It's up there. It's in the cloud. The cloud is raining. And just for fun, the short version of what cloud is, it's the computer is no longer in your office. It's somewhere else.
Yes.
Right. That's all cloud is. Right. Yeah. But back to the AI conversation. So AI will take a lot of workload off of people.
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't turn it into a zero work. Right. Yeah. And it's just another tool to do a job.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come to me because they know I'm a technology person. I've been a technology person for a long time. They're like, "Are you afraid that AI is going to take your job?" Like, no, absolutely not. In fact, there probably will be some people who are automated out of jobs. Absolutely. The guy who made buggy whips lost his job when the auto manufacturer came out, right? There's always going to be new technology. People are always going to lose their jobs. People are going to learn new things and do new things, but jobs also get created, right? When I was a programmer, legitimately, all I did was design screens and printouts. I spent 8 hours a day designing where the date was going to be, where the page number was going to be, all that junk.
That's awesome.
It's boring crud. I hated every second of it. Within less than a year of me starting as a professional programmer, they had a product come out, these types of products called case tools. And basically you had a GUI and you just drug the things where they were. And 5 minutes later, you had the layout done. It was easy, right? And then Visual C, and I know I'm naming names. All these visual programming things where you could actually design screen layouts and drop your boxes here and click on the thing and all this kind of thing. Way easier than doing all this stuff the way we'd been doing it before, where we were doing things pixel by pixel and all that junk. And did I lose my job? No, I just shifted from doing that thing to doing another thing. I was doing installers for a while, and then Microsoft automated that. And AI is the same thing. It's automating some stuff, making things easier. And there's going to be whole new careers from people who know how to use AI. There's going to be new careers, people who train people how to use AI, right? I mean, 10 years ago, was there such a thing as video podcasting, right? Or maybe 20, right? Like
it existed, but it's not nearly as prevalent as it is now. Yeah,
exactly.
100%.
So there's always going to be new technology. There's always going to be new creation out of that, and there's going to be loss out of that. We shouldn't fear. Like I'm not saying I'm not scared of Terminator. Like let's draw the line and put it in something that can shoot us.
Let's make sure like the laws of robotics exist. Like
exactly. I read Asimov. I love exactly right. But I mean let's be sane. If you read about the AIs that they do those kind of trainings with and ask whether or not humans will survive and all that kind of stuff, it's pretty scary stuff. But the AI that we're talking about, the ones that we use for our tools, and I mean, like I'd say probably 90% of the tools that we use today probably have AI in them. And honestly, the stuff that we call AI today, not all of it's even new. Some of the stuff's been around for decades.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't call it AI.
Yeah.
That's a newer term that's being applied to it.
Yeah.
But these are algorithms that have been around for a long time, right? And yeah, they're better now than they were then.
Yeah.
But yeah, a Siri. I did a presentation with Adam, one of the guys who designed Siri, and he was talking about how long ago they were working on this stuff. I'm like, man, I didn't know it went back that far.
Well, what's crazy to me is if you think about the cycle of technology and how long it takes to actually design something and build something. When they came out with the first iPhone, they were already probably working on the third iPhone.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because they were just constantly iterating on the technology. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people are missing in the AI piece of this is you've got to think about like whatever you're doing as a task or your business or those kind of things. Think about how you can iterate on those things faster, right? Yep. And use it to like, still, and I had this conversation with another guy that's on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he's in the creative space of like music and art and poetry and those kind of things. And, it's like to go into an AI and say, write me a poem or a song about this topic, right?
Yep.
But not give it any more additional context than that, right? It'll do something for you,
sure,
but it's not going to be great. It's not going to be this, fantastic whatever. There's just a lot more nuance to that. And even the people who've been really successful with AI music, like there's a lot of people who've gone through and like created whole songs and like done this whole thing, and they've had a lot of streaming success with some of these things. But if you go and have the conversations with the people who created that, they spent hours refining it and going over it and all those kind of things. But maybe what used to take them 2 weeks, 2 months, a year, it's compressed that time down to like, 2 days,
sure,
that kind of thing. And so it's like, to me, it's figuring out like, how do I take the original thought that I have for whatever the thing is that I'm doing and iterate on it faster and develop it faster. And what are the tools that can help me think through this more quickly and like come up with other things.
And do the grunt work pieces.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I go back to the programming thing. Like I still occasionally write some code.
Yeah.
And when the AI coding thing first came out, I'm like, man, is this really going to replace all programmers?
Yeah.
And so I go out and I ask it to write some stuff and I play with them like, no. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's do this. So I pulled out a script that I had already written and I gave the AI tool that I was using, and they're way better now than when I was doing this. But I gave the AI tool the parameters of what I wanted the script to do, and it wrote a script. And then I pulled the two side by side and I looked at the code, and they were strikingly similar.
Pretty close,
right?
yeah.
And they both worked and all that kind of stuff. But this was a basic automation script. Then I go later and I start doing more complex of what they call vibe coding now.
Yeah.
Right? And it'll create some pretty cool stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of trouble. It takes a true programmer to go in and dig into the code and find where things don't quite work and fix them.
Yeah.
So you still at least have to have some programming knowledge and troubleshooting skills, at least today.
Yeah.
And the reason that's one of the reasons it's a problem that a lot of people don't realize is that when AI does code, that probably does this with music too. You're more of a musician than I am. Is AI is not truly creating code. What it's doing is it's going and it's scanning all the code that humans have put out over the years, right? And it's saying, okay, he asked for this piece, and he asked for this piece, and he asked for this piece. I'm going to take these pieces and put them together.
How do we put it together?
Okay?
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that is that with code, like you can grab those snippets and slice them together. That doesn't make working code necessarily. It might, but you have to have places where you initialized your variables and you got loops that call each other and things like that. And the naming has to be consistent, right? So it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
Right? And again, I could see it doing the same thing with music. Okay, well, you want a little bit of Hendrix and you want a little bit of Willie Nelson and you want a little bit of something else. You put it together and it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? How that works.
We did some testing early on because one of the things that I was like, man, if we can figure out how to automate, some drawings and some schematics and some things like that, so it doesn't take, a week to do drawings for a complex room, right?
Right.
That would be awesome because it puts you that much further ahead and the team can start reviewing drawings and making sure that everything's correct and, all of those kind of things. So I started doing some testing. This was probably a year ago. But just in the general models of, whether it's ChatGPT or, Claude or whatever, throwing in the specifications of like, hey, here's all the material that I have. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I want the system to do. Here's how I want it to be connected. Here's what I want the drawing to look like. Ask me any questions you need to make this as accurate as possible. The whole spiel of the prompt, right? Going through that whole thing, get to the end of it.
and it says, okay, yeah, working on it, we're building it, come back, in a day and we'll have it, whatever. Do that for like a week. Still don't have any output. Finally get to the end of the original test that we did. And basically what it spit out was like a piece of paper with like 4 circles on it and 4 lines all going to one side of the page to a box that said AMP. And it was like, this is not a schematic. This is not anywhere close to that. Now, granted, there are some people who have worked through that, and there are some programs and some that we use now where they're getting better, but it's still, to your point, it's like it's grabbing things that it sees from these different places and it's trying to fit it together, but it's like it's not perfect.
It doesn't truly think. I mean, the ones that we are using don't truly think.
Yeah.
It's just recombining. It's predicting. Like if I asked you a question 15 times and you said A, the 16th time you're going to say A. That's basically what it does. It's trying to predict what comes next.
Yeah.
Or it's borrowing and stealing from different places and putting it together, recombining. And those original products were all human work products.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying, like, I've got a friend who's a musician. He hates AI music. He just rants and raves for hours about it.
Yeah.
I get it. I don't want artists to lose their jobs. I really don't. But
and I think it's
not too worried about it.
I think on that side of it too is interesting though, because even with like AI music right now, even as good as it is now, you can, if you listen close enough to it, you can tell the difference.
Sure.
Like it's like anything else. It's like the picture, even with like AI videos and AI pictures, all of that has gotten a whole lot better and a whole lot more detailed and all of these kind of things. But it's like in some fashion or some way, you can still look at I would say most of these things and tell, something's not right there.
Yeah.
Something's not.
The nose is up.
Yeah. It's like whatever the thing is, right?
Yeah, I get it.
What I think is hilarious, what I've seen pop up a whole lot lately, I spend far too much time on Facebook Marketplace just because I scroll through like guitars and everything that's for sale and all the whatever. But it's hilarious to me, the people that are like putting cars up there and then they're combining it with, pictures of girls or whatever to get you to stop on the thing.
Sure.
They're throwing it into the AI and they're creating this picture, and it's like, this is the craziest thing I have ever seen. And then if you look at the pictures, you can tell it's like part of their arms missing, water hose is sticking out where it's like it's not connected to anything. What are we doing, right? So to go back to that last question though, I'm curious. I want to get your perspective on this.
Okay.
So when we talked about what you've learned about human nature, you talked about people being lazy, and I agree to a certain extent. I 100% have seen that on our side as well. Do you think it's actually a desire to be lazy, or do you think it is some kind of deep-seated wiring in us to conserve energy as much as possible?
Oh, I don't believe that most people don't think of themselves as lazy people.
Right.
So I don't think that I think it's like right and wrong. Very few people think of themselves as evil. Right. I read an interview one time of the guy who played Hans Lada in Inglourious Bastards.
Oh yeah.
Right. And they said, man, you were so scary. How did you make yourself evil? And he's like, Hans Lada's not evil, not in his mind. He's doing what's right for his people. Right.
Yeah.
And I think I think lazy is the same way. Right. I don't think people think of themselves as lazy unless you have, a personal trainer or a coworker like James who's like, you didn't go to the gym today, Russ. What's going on, brother?
Yeah.
If you have somebody like that points out you're lazy to you, I think it becomes more obvious. But no, I think that we're naturally wired, like you said, to conserve energy. Yeah. Right. I think that I think humans don't recognize all the ways that God built us.
Right.
Mentally. Right. I am personally a very strong believer that God created humans to work, for example, right? I believe that's why when people retire, they die soon after, as a rule, unless they find some other productive way to use their energy.
Purpose.
Right? Exactly. Purpose. And actually, purpose is a really good point, because it's also the guy who is working in a cubicle who hates his job, right? That guy also has no purpose. Those guys also die a lot faster than guys like you and me who love what we do, right? I have a reason for getting up every morning. I have a reason for showing up to work. And part of it is, hey, I just love the guys I work with, right? But part of it is I have a service that I can provide to other people that makes me happy, right? And so, again, going back to lazy, I think that I think that lazy isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as you're using it as a motivation to make yourself more efficient, right?
Yeah.
At least that's what I tell myself.
Yeah.
When I automate the crap out of everything, so I have to keep doing the same stuff that I hate.
I totally get that.
Yes, sir.
No, I totally understand that. And I agree. I mean, I think it's somewhere in between. I think that there are some people who just could not be bothered, right?
Yep.
And then I think there are people who are like, there's a deep-seated need to, like, to your point, not do double work,
Sure.
not do something the hardest way possible, those kind of things. And it's like, you're always looking for, how do I make this better? How do I make this more efficient and make it easier and all those kind of things. And I think that's something that, a lot of people do lean into. And it does come across that way sometimes because you're like, man, all you got to do is this.
I think most of us want to have our brains engaged at all times.
Yeah.
Most of us are not good at putting our brains in neutral. So it's also one of the reasons why we don't like to go to the gym, right? Because if you're just pumping out reps, your brain goes into neutral and what the heck, man? So, we put a podcast on or we talk to our buddy or whatever, or we just don't go because we I hate the gym. Well, you don't hate working out. You just hate being bored. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think work is the same way. If we can find ways to keep work challenging, I think there's less of the lazy and more of it.
I mean, as you mentioned, people needing to work, people like that being a thing, right? And I think it's interesting because, I mean, if you look at it from a biblical perspective, the major times that God spoke directly to individuals, he basically said, be fruitful and multiply. Yep. And that's not just like procreating, that's be fruitful and multiply in every area of your life, right? Absolutely. So to your point, if you don't have that purpose driving you in the background, being with your team, creating a better service, creating connections with people, making sure that, things are doing what they need to be doing, right? Sure. There's a whole other piece, I think, that comes into play with that. And I think the purpose aspect of that is, it's definitely the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing, I mean, for sure. And I know this for you guys as well. Because without it, it's like, why would you put yourself through all the frustration and, the heartache of things that happen?
I don't think your average people who are watching a podcast understand how hard it is to be a business owner.
Yeah.
And it's not hey, I work for guys like this and I thought the same thing. Hey, you showed up at 9 and you left at 4. How hard is your job? Right. I'm working way harder than you are, but you don't see all the stomach ache at night.
Oh yeah.
You don't see when, my gosh, if my cash flow doesn't improve, I may not be able to make payroll next month. What am I going to do when I can't pay my people?
100%.
And maybe some business owners don't care. Right. But I think most business owners legitimately care about the people who work for them.
Yeah.
And like, it matters. Like we want them to succeed and do well.
It's easy to identify the ones that don't.
Correct.
It's very easy to identify the ones that don't. 100%. Because generally they're the ones that have all kinds of issues with their employees. Yep. Their employees have all kinds of issues with them. Yep. And there's just a whole other thing that happens in the background with all of that. And so I completely agree with you on that. I think, if you are a business owner, chances are you've had that, so I think Cody Sanchez said, it's like, if you haven't been sitting at the kitchen table with your head in your hands wondering, how am I going to make payroll tomorrow? Or how am I going to do whatever? You're not really a business owner, right? You haven't really done anything, substantial or of substance, and granted, do you eventually get to a place where some of these things, you start to figure out the systems and the formulas and the things that you need to do to progressively make things better and to get to a place where you're not having to do that all the time, right?
Yep.
But that's almost part of, like, you have to go through some of the hard to get to a place where it's like you understand the value of what it is that you're.
That was your learning process.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the strongest blades are forged in the hottest fires, right?
100%.
You can't be the weapon God wants you to be if you don't have the dross burned.
100%.
Right? And so, like, I despise some of the stuff I went through in my business. There were points in my business early on where people would come to me and say, hey, if you had to do it all over again, would you still do it? I was like, no, I would not. Today, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Right? We had something happen to us. Like, when I first started the business, we had zero income, right? Every business that way, right? And so my first employee, who I want to brag on a little bit, name is Sean. I hired Sean at zero pay.
Yeah.
That's insane, right? But he called me up. He's like, hey, I heard you started your own MSP. Can I come work for you?
Yeah.
I'm like, absolutely. I'd love to have you. You can start tomorrow. I can't pay you anything. He's like, what? I'm like, I got no income. How can I pay you? Yeah. I said, but I'll make you a deal. I'm like, every bit of work we do, half the money will go to the company. I'll give you the other half until I can get you to the salary you're making today.
Yeah.
I'll give you half of whatever the company brings in, and I will take zero. I won't take $1.
Yeah.
The other half will go to the company, pay the expenses and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
I won't take anything until I can get you to your salary.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you insane? No, I didn't say that because I get a gift horse in the mouth and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, great. So he came to work for me.
That's awesome.
Literally within a week of me starting the company. And so here we are. We got no clients. We got no income. We're busting our butts. And I forgot why I started telling the story. So anyway, we were talking about the stresses of being a
business owner. Yeah.
So we've got this thing going. We're picking up clients. We're going along.
Yeah.
And we finally get to the point where I've got him to the point where I can take a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we signed up a couple of new clients right at that same time frame. He gets enough where he's at his salary. Like, God, I can finally get a paycheck because I've been living off savings and it was getting rough.
Yeah.
And I get that first paycheck, which I needed to pay my mortgage, and a company puts a lawsuit out against us. A former employer of mine.
Wow.
And they were saying that I was violating my non-compete, but it had been much longer than a year before I started my business. In fact, I had waited until when I did to start my business because of that non-compete. Mm-hmm. And they didn't contractually have a leg to stand on, and they knew it, but they also knew I was a startup with no income, and they figured if a lawsuit would put me out of business, and I'd stop taking their clients. And so anyway, so now I've got lawyers, I've got stress, I'd already not been sleeping, right? Mm-hmm. I hadn't slept in months at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here I am. I just got this guy to where he's getting what he should, what he deserves.
What he should be getting paid.
And I've just gotten up to make my mortgage, and I got to do that again next month, or I'm screwed, right? The bank will come take my house away, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm freaking out a little bit. Actually, I'm freaking out a lot. So I go right back to not sleeping again, and we go through the whole process. It took a while, but we won, fortunately. And everything wound up being okay. But again, that was a fire. That was something that I had to go through to become who I am today. Mm-hmm. Fast forward a few months later, and I guess I'll take it back. It was about a year and a half later when our second IRS bill came due, and my accounting lady came, who's also my wife, came to me freaking out. What are we gonna do? We owe the IRS all this money. They're gonna put us in jail and take our house, and we're gonna be on the streets, and whatever. I'm like, okay. I say, look, did we break any laws? No. Did we do anything unethical or immoral? Or anything? No, we didn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're just going to work out a payment plan.
Yeah.
Right? The IRS wants to get paid. Mm-hmm. If they put us out of business,
they won't get paid.
They don't get paid.
Exactly.
And not only do they not get paid right now, they don't get paid for all the years of our business in the future.
Exactly.
Right? We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right? They don't, there's no vested good for them to put us out of business.
It's in their best interest for you to be in business.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more in their best interest now, 13 years later, than it was then, right? Because my tax burden is a lot higher now than it was then when there was two of us and her working part-time.
100%.
Right? And so, but if we hadn't been through that earlier fire, I'd have been freaking out right beside her, right? But because I had been through that, I realized my tolerance for that stress had gone way up.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's a lot of things along the way that happened that were really bad things that happened. Yeah. We lost a key employee. He died of COVID. It broke my heart. It still breaks my heart. I still break down crying about it sometimes. Yeah. But it made me a better person. All the things that happened, all these bad things that happened was God forming us into who we have to be.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
To be who he wants us to.
I think my COVID story on all of that is, so in November of 2020, I got COVID and was in the hospital for 10 days. And so at the time I had been with the company at that point for about 4.5, 5 years. We had some extremely stressful times from when I started up to that point, in the fact that, so go back to like 2016, 2017, we had like the tax day flood on the other side of town. It happened again. Harvey happened, and then they had another instance where there was some other flooding. We had some employees that were affected by that, and so dealing with all of that. And then we had all these projects, and so one of our major clients, the whole first floor of their building completely flooded during that time frame, right? And so then it was this huge thing of like, build a team, go in and like redo a lot of their infrastructure, work through this project of going through every conference room in their building, redo all of the stuff on the first floor, deal with all of that. So there's all of these things of stress. And so in like 2019, I got to the point where I was like,
I was having a conversation. I was driving home and I was in the car talking to one of our team, and we were talking about some issue or some problem. And I just reached a point where I was like, that's it. I'm done. I can't handle anymore. Like, I have reached the top, like, and I'm not going to talk about this anymore because we're not solving this problem today. And I just need to like take a break.
Yep.
And from that point on, like, because of like, we had maintained such a high stress load and high project load and all the rest of that, I was like, it took me the better part of 6 months to really like work through that and work out of that. Right.
True.
And at that point I didn't own the company and, you know, wasn't in charge of any of that. But at the same time, there was still a lot of responsibility to deal with, and got COVID and was in the hospital knowing like what could be coming in ICU, doing everything I could do to stay up, you know, vertical and, you know, breathing and all the rest.
Stay out of those ventilators.
Yeah, stay. Yeah, not get on a ventilator at the time, because that was the real deal. Such a weird experience being in the hospital during that time frame, because this is when like you couldn't have visitors. Everybody that came into your room was basically wearing a hazmat suit. It was the most bizarre time that I've ever had. But I got to the other side of it, recovered and all that kind of stuff, and then I started to realize some of these things in business that were coming up around projects, around these other things, some of that stuff that like before had like pushed me to that level of I'm out, I'm done, I'm checking out, I can't deal with this. Those things I'd start having those things come up, and I'd just be like, we're going to deal with it. Here's the plan. Just, let's go. Like, it's not, and part of that I think is like, you just, to your point, like the more that, and I was thinking about this the other day, the more that you go through the heat of difficult times and the heat of stress, you know, you do get forged into something that comes out the other side stronger.
Absolutely.
Something that can deal with more of those things. And I was thinking about it in the context of relationships. It's funny to me, in working relationships, I've built some of the best relationships with people having gone through very difficult times in work. Like, there's guys that, you know, we kind of came up through all of that stuff together. And it's like, those people are like guys that I could call, and it's like, you pick up, you know, from that point, you know, you could have not talked to them for 6 months, but as soon as you pick up the phone, like, you pick up right where you left off. And it's because you both went through that whole, you know, time together. Right. And so it's a relationship not built on, you know, mutual interest or whatever, but it's built on the mutual pain of
shared pain,
going through whatever the thing was. Right. And so it's just interesting to see how
you can bond with people like you and I are doing now over things that happened to us. Because you went through the fire and I went through the fire, we could share our fires. Like, I feel that.
I understand.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Totally get that.
No doubt.
But yeah, no, Russell, really appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah, brother.
Thank you for taking the time. This was such a great.
I enjoyed this.
Such a great conversation. Take a minute. Tell people where they can find you. If there's anything that you want to talk about specifically with Quinn to get out in front of folks. Okay, the floor is yours.
That sounds good. So again, we're Quinn Technology Solutions. We're located in Houston, Texas. You can find us at www.quinn-tech.com. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, all those sorts of things.
Awesome.
So yeah, we do IT and cybersecurity and compliance, as we mentioned before. So on the compliance side, we primarily deal with CMMC. There's clients who do work for the government, but we can also do HIPAA and ISO 9000 and pretty much any kind of compliance standard we want to help with.
Good stuff, man.
Yes, sir.
And you guys have a video game night coming up in
we
July.
Do. Yeah, it's something we started internally where we get together and play old school video games, old school LAN party video games. And some of the ladies that would come, wives and things like that, we hate video games. Why are we doing? So we started doing board games and stuff too. So yeah, we blow it out. We bring some food in and just the kids run dogs running around like crazy people. It's a lot of fun.
That's a good time, man.
Yeah.